Render, you take 12 damage. Okay, turn 9. Bubbletub, it's your turn to attack.
I guess I hit the ogre again.
The ogre takes 9 damage. Render, your turn. Render, your attack.
Huh? Did we win?
Man, my encounters suck.
Well, maybe, but with a little help, we can make them better.
Welcome to the Grizzled Game Master.
Welcome to the Grizzled Game Master. I'm Mike, and today we're going to be talking about encounters. Encounters are where your players get to interact with the story and help shape it. They can be non-combat encounters like social or exploration, or they can be fights, everybody's favorite. So when should an encounter happen? An encounter should happen whenever the story needs it to, or whenever your players start an encounter. Now you should have a couple that are planned to, story-driven encounters to move the story plot along a little bit there, but your players can have impromptu encounters whenever. Like they may want to haggle for the price of something at the market, or they, have an impromptu fight breakout if they get tired of the drunk at the bar. So player-driven encounters are good because that means you have player buy-in. Okay, so let's look at non-combat encounters. Tip 1 for non-combat encounters is narration over rolling. Now, nothing bogs down a game more than skill check after skill check having to be rolled. You want to actually role play through these encounters. Here, you want to try to encourage your players to role play through them, especially a social encounter. You want to have them role play through, but you got to be aware of their limitations. Not every, that player may not have the 18 charisma that his rogue has. So, but you want to encourage it. So you want to you want to roll when you have to, but encourage role playing when you can. The key to any good social encounter is the NPCs. Like back in episode 3, make sure you give your NPCs a personality. You don't want to have just a, dry back and forth. You want to, describe the environment, describe the NPCs, have them, nervously look over their shoulder while they're talking, or maybe have them talk really fast or really low. You can have them pace back and forth while they're talking. With just a little bit, we can make these conversations more memorable, just adding a few little quirks to the NPC. Now, exploration encounters usually involve searching for clues or, doing some kind of investigation, looking for information. And the key to an exploration encounter is atmosphere. You want to be as descriptive as possible when describing the situation to make sure you hammer down on what mood you're looking for. If the players are rifling the mayor's drawer for information, you want to have a really tense atmosphere. You want to describe, the sound of the guards coming down the hallway or conversations happening in the next room. Anything at all to really hammer home the urgency of the situation. And when your players are looking for information, give them some. And not just what they're looking for either. This is a great opportunity in exploration encounters to drop in some information into the campaign. It could be something important, story-driven wise, or it could be some rumors, or it could be, plot hooks, and see where the story goes from there. But, these encounters are good tools to help your players guide the story.
I can't believe I got such a good deal on all the stuff!
Do you really need cold weather gear to explore the graveyard?
Cribs could be chilly.
I can't go. I still have to finish the books from Tobin's bar. I can't believe the cost of good minstrels have gone up, and don't get me started on Elven Ale.
All right, back to combat.
Okay, combat. That's why we play the games. Any role-playing system, a large chunk of the rules are going to be towards combat. Now, we're not going to go into the math of setting up an encounter. There's plenty of websites to do that. I mean, D&D 5th edition has their own 5th edition calculator, encounter calculator. I think Pathfinder has an encounter calculator. If you want to really crunch the numbers, because some of those can be not quite as accurate, there's a great site called Kobold Fight Club, where you can just, punch in various, monsters, it'll tell you what your players, what level your players are, and you can calculate all that information. I'm not worried about that. There's plenty of ways to get the right challenge rating for the monsters. What I'm here is talking about little things to make your encounters, your combat encounters, more memorable. All right, nothing hurts a game more than boredom, and combat can take a while if it's endless rolling. I hit, I take damage, I do damage, I take damage, just constantly over and over again. You want to, bring something to it. And a big part of that, you're going to hear this all over the place. Number one advice you see online is terrain, to incorporate the terrain into the combat. And this is, this can't be overstated. You set the stage for the encounter just like you do with the social encounter or the exploration encounter where you set the atmosphere. You need to set the stage for the combat encounter. Now, whether you're using maps or whether it's theater of the mind, whichever, you got to make sure you explain what's there. Make sure you add stuff into the encounter to make it more interesting, whether it's traps or whether you're, fighting next to a cliff face or on a rickety bridge or, in the snow or through the swamps. Make sure there's some hazards in there or something that the monsters can use, to fight. And speaking of monsters, you want to make sure that they have, unique tactics and switch them up a little bit here. You don't want to have, an endless stream of orcs, throw something else in there. Kind of break it up. Have different types of monsters working together in an encounter. Have, bad guys hire monster mercenaries, some of the smarter monsters working for them. And, think about how they're going to fight. We might have orcs who throw crazed goblins into combat to attack you, or, have kobolds working together, releasing, rock traps while you're fighting the horde. Stuff like that. You want to make sure that you give the monsters something, not just your standard run up and hit. And you want to make sure, just like with regular social encounters, you want to get through them pretty quickly. You don't want to bog it down here. For most encounters, you want to get in and out in a few rounds as possible, unless they're major encounters. And in fact, most ones, impromptu fights that happen or the smaller fights, you want to get through pretty quickly. But then there's the bigger ones, the boss fights, I guess, or the important encounters. Those you can take a little more time with. Some of those can even take, a whole gaming session just for one combat if the story calls for it. But that's the key right there. The next tip here is, the stakes and objectives for the combat. The bad guys need to have an objective, and the players need to have an objective in the combat. And it may not necessarily be to kill the other person. My objective might be to, get in and grab an item and get out. Or, the monsters may be just trying to stall the players for long enough for a ritual to finish. But make sure you have a goal in mind and have the monsters act accordingly. Not everything should be, I'm out here to fight to the death for no reason. By adding that little element of, a reason for them to fight, a goal in combat, you don't have to sit there and wait for the last hit point to tick away. You can actually, finish combat earlier, or, have players reach goals without having to kill everything on the board. So that's pretty important. And make sure if you're going to have these big combats, like I said, make sure there are stakes. Make sure there's something. If they don't get this combat done, something bad will happen. Something that moves the plot along, or maybe they need to get there to rescue somebody before they're sacrificed to an altar, or whatever it is. Make sure that the players understand that why this battle is important. So that's a good one. And when describe things, describe like near misses or critical hits. You don't have to describe every swing, but those are important things in the combat. If somebody swings and almost hits, describe what happens. And if you roll a critical hit, describe what happens there. Now, I use critical hit charts in my game. They can be a little deadly. You got to be careful with critical hit charts. But there's plenty of them out there that are very descriptive. So even if you don't use like the actual, bleed effects or limb removals or whatnot, there's a lot of great descriptions in some of these critical hit charts to describe what a critical hit looks like. So that adds something to the combat. And another thing to help make the combat a little more dynamic is if the players ask for something, let them have it. Like if somebody asks is there a chandelier I can swing down from? Yeah, why not? Let them have a chandelier. Or there's some barrels or boxes I can dive behind. Yeah, throw them in there. Even if you didn't have them really planned in there. If they ask, that means they're thinking about how they're going to do this combat. They're involved, they're engaged, and let them try it. If they want to try something crazy that there's not exactly rules for, like I want to, climb up the dragon's back and swing around, poke it in the eye or whatever, let them roll for it. Let them try it. Don't tell them no, that it takes them right out of the combat. It's like, there's always a shot. And then describe it. Make sure, as descriptive as possible. And lastly, with combat encounters, be ready to improvise. Like I said before, some of these challenge rating calculators may not be as accurate. Usually at lower levels, they tend to be, overpowered with the monsters, and at higher levels, they tend to be underpowered with the monsters. Make sure you adjust it. And really, when it comes right down to it, to be honest with you, I don't even use challenge ratings when I'm designing encounters. I think of what would be cool, for the fight-wise, cool for the monsters, and I adjust accordingly. I adjust hit points accordingly. If the players are dying out, adjust the hit points of the monsters, or bring in some reinforcements, or have a landslide happen and take out some of the monsters. Something, be ready to do some kind of impromptu stuff to help them out, or maybe, either adjust the amount of damage that the monster does. If they're down to under 10 hit points and it's getting towards the end of the combat, you don't want to kill off the party necessarily. Pull your punches. That's why you have a DM screen. Pull your punches if you need to. Or if they're blowing through your monster too quickly, add some hit points or have some reinforcements for the monsters come into the combat. You can easily adjust combat on the fly, and you're going to need to quite a bit. So even if you use the challenge rating calculators, don't be afraid to, fudge stuff here and there to make the combat more exciting and more interesting for the players.
Okay, the bucket lands squarely on the ogre's head, blinding him.
I bull rush him.
I roll barrels of fish into his legs.
The ogre topples over the cliff. The slaves are free. Woo! Thanks, Grizzled Game Master.
Well, there you have it, folks. Encounters with just a few little tips. You can make them far more memorable, whether they're fights or whether they're social encounters or whether they're exploration. Just a few little things. So make sure you like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. Let me know if you have any tips on making encounters more memorable, or if you have any subjects you want me to cover on future shows. Be sure you leave a comment down below. We like reading the comments. I make sure I check them all out and answer as many as I can. Also, if you want to support the channel, you can do so below with our Patreon link. Also, check out some of our other shows we have on the channel. We have plenty. And again, I'll be back next week with some more advice for DMs, young and old. Thank you.